Hello, everybody, and welcome. My camera is off. I'm facing a little bit of a technical difficulty at the back here. My name is Nati. Like, welcome to this our second virtual hangout for the Civic Tech Innovation Forum 2022. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, I'll be correspondent together with Kumo Silo, who's going to be helping us in this session. So she'll be asking all the important questions as we go. As for you, please do introduce yourself in the chat and let us know where you are in the world. If you have any questions during the Hangout, feel free to write them in the Q&A. Technical assistant for the day, Civic Alichana, will put those questions up on the screen during the Q&A section of our Hangout. I want to stress that the session itself is not a panel discussion or a roundtable or a webinar. It is a Hangout. This is meant to be a relaxed environment for exhibitors to share what they've been working on, share their experiences, and hopefully learn from other innovators in the room. So I'd encourage the speakers today to pay attention to the other speakers in the room as well as they talk about their work. And feel free to ask questions of their own or share anecdotes about similar experiences they may share with others in the room. I'd like to ask you to interact with us throughout this conference on our social media platforms on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Search for the Civic Tech Innovation Network. We will be sharing this Hangout on our YouTube channel, so pay attention to those platforms to get full access. Now, I'd like to ask that we all remain muted during today's event unless we have been called on to speak on the floor. This is so we can avoid any confusion and background noises that might cause disturbance during our Hangout. Now, let's quickly introduce our exhibitors for the day. Please welcome Joel Parker, Chloe Castle, Sihle Makanya Ntembu, and Abbas Inua. We're going to bring them up on the stage so they can quickly just introduce themselves. So a 30-second introduction of, here, my name is whoever, and I come from this particular organization. So we're going to start with Joanne, who is already on the stage. Hi, Joanne.
Hi, thanks, Nati. My name is Joanne Parker. I'm from Open Cities Lab, representing the Cities program.
Thank you, Joanne. Chloe Castle, welcome.
Good day, Nati. Thank you very much for the opportunity today. As mentioned, my name is Chloe. I'm representing Dear South Africa today, and I'm from the operations role. Thanks so much.
Right. Much. We have here, it says Jean-Luc, but it's Nkulego Mthembu behind that. So hi, Nkulego, how are you
doing? So this is actually Callum Oberholzer behind you. Sorry, Nkulego was under his own profile. Yeah, no, they are unfortunately had to book off sick, but yeah, thank you so much for just giving us the space to speak here. I'm from Black Box. And yeah, we're excited to connect and see what other people are doing, as well as present some stuff ourselves soon.
Okay, what do you say your name was again?
Callum Oberholzer. I'm the director of Black Box.
Fantastic, thank you so much. We also have Abbas Inua from Nigeria. Hi, Abbas. Okay, Abbas might have a connection challenge there. Abbas, are you there? Okay, he's not there. We also have Sihle Makanya from Open Up. Hi, Sihle.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sihle Makanya, and I'm an Agile project manager for Open Up. And it's a pleasure to be part of this forum.
Right, thank you. So Abbas is supposed to start us off with the presentations today. So what we're going to do, we're going to have 5 minutes for each of our exhibitors. He says I was disabled by the host. Can you say something though, Abbas? Maybe just unmute yourself and let's see if you can say something. So he's going to start us off and say something about, just a 5 minutes presentation about his organization, Transparency IT. And then thereafter, we're going to have Chloe Castle as well say something about the SA. Abbas has now joined us and you can see his video. Hi, Abbas. Quick introductions and tell us a little bit about Transparency IT.
Hi, thank you very much. I think initially I was disabled by the host. My name is Abbas. I'm the founder and director of Transparency Information Technology Initiative, mostly or popularly known as Transparency IT here in Nigeria. Transparency IT is a civic technology organization working to amplify or foster courtroom openness in the country, promote citizen engagement, and advance social justice. Over the years, Transparency IT has been working in the criminal justice system in Nigeria, advocating for transparent and accountable justice system. Within the period, as a civic technology organization, we begin to use technology in order to engage stakeholders, engage the citizens to galvanize their support in a way that we can leverage technology to demand accountability in the third arm of the government, which is the justice sector. Within the period, we have built a national online database, which is the first of its kind in Nigeria and I think across Africa. The national database has been instrumental in guiding our work and informing stakeholders in taking decisions to implement reforms in the justice sector. Particularly, the database has helped to bring insights about the true positions of corruption cases in the country, the trends, patterns of prosecution of corruption cases, and also what is happening in the court system by opening the court system, using daily updates to engage citizens and galvanize their supports, both on the social media and through the database as well. Basically, the database has been built in a way that we have a data portal that you can make analysis as a citizen or even outside Nigeria. You can make analysis about the record we have on the database, which is corruptioncases.ng. It's going to inform you about the number of cases you have ongoing on trial. It's going to inform you about the number of cases that have been decided. It's going to help you also to analyze the decisions of the court. It's also going to help you to analyze which judge is handling the majority of the corruption cases in the country and which state is handling those cases. What is the rate of compliance of those cases in regard or in compliance to the administration criminal justice act in Nigeria and also other Eastern laws. Beyond helping citizens to analyze the cases and giving them information about the cases, the database has gone a long way in helping to promote research about the criminal justice system in Nigeria globally. We have citizens within the country and outside the country, people visiting the database, sending us requests about the data on their researches and on their work and their own project, which is helping them to come out with informed decisions about their work, and also other countries looking out to domesticate similar or to replicate rather similar projects in their country. Interestingly, what the database is doing now, which I find it very much interesting, is helping to reduce the rate of criminal activities regarding cyber criminal activities in the country. How does it do that? The database is helping stakeholders or the citizens globally to be able to carry out due process on the people they are working with and on the people they are transacting with, in terms of businesses, in terms of relationships and what have you. I'll give you an example. We have an instance where we receive mails from people outside the country asking us to verify information or wanting to verify information about people that they are working or looking to transact with. And eventually during the process, when they make a brief search about those people, they find out that these are people who have corruption cases recorded on our database, and they want to find out more information to say, okay, fine. So person has contacted us and he wants us to buy something, or he wants to buy something from us, and we found his name or her name on your database. Can you give us a bit of information about that? So these are some of the cases that has to do with people who are into criminal activities, like what we call them generally in Nigeria, Yahoo, who are into cybercrime activities, and it helps people to conduct due diligence on them. And if their identities are found on our database, and we caution them on how to go about dealing with these people, so that to avoid falling victims of criminal activities. So basically, this is what we do at Transparency IT. This is our initiative that is helping to inform citizens, about the justice system, helping to ensure accountability about the justice system, and also create courtroom openness by providing to the public the court proceedings and sections, so that they'll be able to understand what is happening in each court activities, and also helping researchers to carry out research about the criminal justice system in Nigeria, and helping people to avoid falling victims of criminal activities globally. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Abbas. But I think so. What I'm going to ask everybody now is we have a Q&A section. So on your right-hand side of your screen, there is a Q&A section where you can put in your questions. So the speakers or everybody else in the room, please do put in your questions for Abbas there. If you have any questions about how he accesses the data or how he distributes it, please put those questions in there. Kumo will ask questions later on in our Q&A section. Next up is Chloe Castle from DASA. She's going to be telling us about their initiative and what's happening there. Hi, Chloe.
Hi, Nati. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. And thank you to everybody's time here today. I think this is a great platform, and we're very excited to share what we've been working on. I just would like to share my screen for a second. Okay, should be coming up, I think. Okay. So just to kick off today, we are introducing Dear South Africa. We are quite familiar with Civic Tech and are great supporters. So Dear South Africa is a non-profit company, and what we do within our organization is we facilitate public participation. So you will see that our Dear is made up of democratically engaged, active, and responsible citizens. And that is exactly what sums up our audience. And it's been quite prevalent through the work that we do. So just to start right at the beginning, we shape and assist to shape legislation and the policies around that on a municipal, provincial, and national level. The reason we do this is because we wish to increase accountability and transparency. I think there's been some instances where we've encountered legislation that comes up. Sorry, there was just a note I'm reading. We've encountered situations where policy comes up. Government are often working on reviewing policies, which is good. Change is always necessary, but change must be for the betterment and in line with our democratic values. So our objective is to serve as the conduit to bridge this gap between society and governments across all sectors. So we try and enable citizens of the country to proactively participate in this different campaigns to create impactful and meaningful policy. By doing that, we are shaping this and formulating policy that's relevant to our country, not just our country, but our economic sector as well. So in terms of our Dear platform, we have built this in-house. We've been going for a couple years now, since 2018. And Dear South Africa initially started with quite a manual process. Understandably, we didn't quite have the tech platforms available at that stage. So everything has been built in-house. It's been a terrific learning curve. There's been a couple of lessons along the way of what to do, what not to do. But the idea from the platform is to digitalize and centralize public participation, because at this stage, you'll see with most gazettes that go out, we still have fax as an option, and email is the other option, neither of which are entirely conducive to reaching our population on the greater scale. So where we found our impact is that we have increased participation in the public space. as well as not just having that ability to participate. We've managed to make a full turn cycle with full reports. So anybody that's participated and journalists are able to view a fully audited and transparent report based on the findings. So with this, it's applied to, we've done campaigns within the Electoral Act as well, which was a few changes were presented, some good, some bad. And the public have actually quite successfully shaped that policy. So we had an efficient voting procedure through, I think it was last year now or earlier this year, I can't remember, time goes so fast. So in terms of our impact further to that, we obviously are looking at your rule of law and orderly transfers of power between government. So government has obviously got multiple different departments, different legislation, different sectors. So we are trying to streamline that as well, and it does enable and assist them as well, where there are some constraints to perhaps review all the comments, because sometimes, we can sit with 300,000 plus submissions. Okay, and then in terms of sustained democratic culture, this is obviously in staying in line with our democratic principles. So that's across the board. I won't spend too much time just for the sake of our keeping time over here. But then on the last point, we've got the responsive, transparent, and accountable governance. So that's just referencing our reports, so that we do give a full end-to-end solution, not only for the public, but for government as well. Okay. So moving along, we obviously have progressed and we've made some changes through how we've done this. Initially, the platform was built in-house, and we have recently, with the Charter Project Africa, we've recently been enabled to formulate our campaign builder into a bigger and better system. We had some very manual constraints, which we are successfully overcoming. And with that, we can now process our reviews a lot quicker. So I'm not going to run through this in too much depth, but basically we proactively assess the constitutional and legislative amendments. We set up a campaign. We distribute this through multiple user engagements. Participants are updated through this, and we then finish off with a report. Our intention at this stage, we are currently operating with all sectors of the population, which includes your students, employed individuals, unemployed business owners, and retired individuals, but we're seeking to collaborate with tech partners for rural development. So just having a look here, we've identified that we've got 23 million smartphones in South Africa, and we've only delivered 4 million submissions over the past few years to Parliament, which is still not a bad feat, but we're looking to increase that. And obviously over Africa, there are 650 million smartphones. So we've got a lot of room to grow vertically. We have had, as I mentioned, just some constraints. I'll go through them really quickly, that some system overload issues. We've had some low cooperation from government and sometimes poor participant adoption. But through all of that, we are working together and seeking additional partners. And here is our website link if anybody seeks to take a look. But we are also available for additional questions and meetings. Thank you for that, Nat.
Thank you so much, Chloe, for that presentation. So what I'll ask everybody to have their questions ready. So what we're going to do, we're going to have Joanne Parker present just now, and then thereafter we're going to do some questions, right? So that we have our presentations fresh in our minds, so that the three front presentations fresh in our minds, so we can ask questions, and then we're going to have the two presentations thereafter, and then do another Q&A. All right. So Combo is going to be ready for that. In the meantime, Joanne Parker, hello.
Hi, thanks. Thanks so much, Nati. Okay, so I've got a few slides. 5 minutes is very quick, but I'll share the link to more information on the slides afterwards. So perhaps your colleagues have worked with users like these and are familiar with these sorts of use cases, but these are the sorts of needs that we address through the Cities program at Open Cities Lab. So we work with city employees who say our reporting is manual, they collect data, they capture it onto a spreadsheet, they email it out, it takes time, the data sometimes has errors, no one's really reading the reports, or they're not sure if they are or aren't. Civil society organization founders say that they're monitoring the activities of cities using cutting-edge research and methodologies, but this information is hidden from users in PDF reports. In order to create meaningful change, they really need to more effectively communicate this information. City leadership is saying, I need a dashboard to report service delivery backlogs. I'd love to share resolution rates with citizens. However, I don't have a strategy for how to consolidate or open city data. Finally, citizens like me are saying, I want to vote in the upcoming elections, but I can't find who my options are to vote for. I don't even understand what my vote means or how it counts. We aim to solve these problems through our expertise, which are in the areas of civic tech, data capacity building, action research, data science, and stakeholder engagement. We believe that if we can solve problems like these with these sorts of expertise, we can empower citizens, build trust and accountability in civic space, build capacity within government, will enable participation in decision-making, evidence-based urban intervention, and inclusive co-design that will ultimately improve the lives of residents in urban spaces, which is really our goal. So we do, the Cities program aims to intervene in 3 critical areas. I'm not going to tell you about it. I'm going to show you an example of this. So the first one is improve data governance and data capacity within city institutions and CSOs. An example of this is the Durban Edge Open Data Portal, which is built on best practice platforms like Webflow and CCAN. What this allows is for the eThekwini municipality team to publish their own data stories, raw data sets and dashboards, which they do prolifically. They used to publish PDFs, now they're using this platform. Secondly, we aim to increase civic engagement among citizens. An example of this is an app that you may have used in recent South African elections. We also deployed it for the recent Kenyan elections. The IEC releases candidates in long PDFs that are terrible to try and find who you can actually vote for. This app scrapes that data, you can enter your address and you can find out who your options are and information on them. Thirdly, we aim to intervene by strengthening the urban data ecosystem. We do this through tools such as Intact, which we've developed with National Treasury. This is a tool for government. It's a toolkit for government on how to open data. It first starts by saying, don't panic. Colleagues will all know, because you're all working in the space, these learnings, but maybe you can comment on them afterwards or relate to them. But we found that data pipelines trump data portals, but no one's really asking for a data pipeline in their needs. They're asking for data portals because that's what the end user sees and what sounds right. But don't be fooled. The data pipeline is the more difficult and more important thing. Data governance maturity. There is a data governance maturity ceiling without a data strategy in place. Data strategies are hugely important. They should be citizen-led. There's no point ICT having sitting with a complex data strategy to improve efficiencies when it doesn't actually improve service delivery. A use case approach is helpful. It combines theory and practice. So actually working on a problem with the department while you're developing a data strategy or to assist implement a data strategy is ideal. Minimum viable products are very important. A colleague, Ella, and colleagues on the call, Callum, are doing a panel discussion during the virtual event on the importance of minimum viable products. I really recommend checking that out. And I see my 5 minutes is up. So I'll just close out by saying that working at the interface of citizens and city institution requires a lot of time and a lot of patience, but I'm sure you all know that, but it's really worth it. And we're really seeing that the change in people in South African cities, at least, is already there. It's just the bureaucracy and the institutions that need to catch up.
All right, we made it just in time, Joanne. We have the last slide there. So I'm going to take a question from Sarah in the Q&A. So we're going to put that up very quickly. And then once that is done, I know Kumo is itching in a seat to ask her questions as well. So Sarah is asking, have you found a change in citizens' interest in policy over the last few years? She expects more apathy. She's curious about your experience. So maybe let's get all the panelists on here, Sife, so that I think this is a question that perhaps may be applicable to everybody, for Abbas, for Joanne, and Chloe. So let's put all of them up here. So we're going to start with Joanne, and you take a stab at that question, and then perhaps we can have some conversation happening, and then we'll go to questions from Kumo and the next presenters there. So Joanne?
Thanks. Sorry, I just want to have a quick look at the applications to our use cases. So has citizens' interest in policy changed over the last few years? Yeah. Okay, so obviously we're not dealing in the policy space exactly, but I definitely think that, so one of the learnings that's on the slide is around impact, and the way that we're trying to grow impact is through more citizen engagement with tools. And I think it's definitely the gap. So it's much easier to create civic tech than it is to get citizens to engage with civic tech. And I'm actually, really interested to hear from the other panelists how you've managed to do it, because the numbers you were talking about, Chloe, are really high, and I'm really encouraged by that. I think similar to Sarah. We have had over 2 million users of the My Candidate app. So I think we really were able to get a lot of usership there. But I think that speaks to the fact that it was really demand driven and around a very specific need. So an election date is coming up. And so citizens were driven to use those applications in order to vote. So that was a good example of driving citizen engagement from our end. But our other platforms that don't have that similar sort of demand, we definitely do struggle to get the numbers up on the platform, and it's something we're constantly working with, is how best to engage with citizens. So yeah, I'm very interested to hear from other panelists.
Yeah, I'd be very interested to hear as well from people who have had success with engaging people on their platforms, because I think, like you said, that's a big factor, because you can't just create to create. You need to create for users to actually apply. Abbas, I'm curious about what your experience is.
Yeah, thank you very much. I always look at it. The ultimate civic tech is the people. So for every project, for every design, for every app that you're actually building to solve public problems, you're actually building it for the people. Without the citizen engagement, without the people engaging the app, I think the end result may not be near. In our experience with our corruption cases database over the years, I think with our record now, we have averagely between 1,000 to 1,500 users every month. And this is because we think we go outside the structure of the application to galvanize citizen support through the social media. Then now we begin. Ours was an easy one because Nigerians have interest about corruption cases, given the speed and the prevalence of corruption in the country. It was easy to galvanize their support. Then I'm most concerned about the impact. What is the change? What is the reaction from the citizens? When we begin to engage citizens and we begin to get their support, it became a source of a thing for us, because we are not getting the desired result. We get the support, we get the citizen buy-in, but then we are not getting the desired result in terms of what we want to achieve, which is ultimately having to see corruption cases progress at every level towards speedy conclusion and towards speedy decision of those cases. Then we think look at it beyond the people outside the government. Those working in the government are also part and parcel of the community that we are trying to change. Then we bring those stakeholders from the government who are also citizens and part of the problem, and we look at them as solution. Then we engage them to ensure that we get the desired result. So changing the perception of the citizens, amplifying the interests of the citizens, I believe it goes beyond those outside the government. It also includes those working from the inside who ultimately will make the decision that will lead the change or the impact you are looking towards achieving. So basically, we build partnerships that brings both the citizens from outside and from the inside to use the numbers we have and also the data we have at our disposal in order to spur their interest and also spur actions toward getting the desired results.
Thank you, Abbas. Curious about Chloe as well. If building partnerships has worked for you in any case, if you've actually done that as well. But yeah, let's share your experiences first and maybe get to that as well.
Thanks, Nati. And I think a question from Sarah, great feedback from Joanne and Abbas as well. I think, the platform development, there is no recipe book, let's say, to get citizen engagement. And, Dear South Africa, starting out a few years ago, there was very much uncharted waters. So in terms of seeing the responses, the public in our experience has been initially, I would say they were quite apathetic, because at what point, is your say going to make a difference? And if I put my comment forward, what's that impact? And given all of that, I think we needed to also prove that, this public participation process has definitely got value. We are the ones that have to live every day if the electricity prices go up, or, we are the ones that are experiencing lights off if that is the case. In South Africa, load shedding is a very common household term now. It's the election components. If there are, ballot papers lost, it's us that goes through that process. And this is something that we've understood with our citizens, as a whole, all of us, we are all citizens and we are all included, that through trying to open the channels, we take a neutral approach. We are non-partisan. So we're not here to shape your view, and each of us should be allowed to have that perception of what we feel about proposed legislation. So within that scope of public participation, I think our success in distribution and getting participants engaging has been part of distribution channels, definitely collaborative partners, and transparency. I think, a lot of people, it's coming back to Sarah, initially they were going, well, not really. But having seen there have been multiple wins in these different, embedded generation for private electricity power creation was initially, I think, at 10 megawatts. Through all comments of the public, yes, not fully, and no, I don't, as the main categories, every single person disagreed with the capacity value. So government had increased it to 100 megawatts. And I just think, those are very critical key wins for all of us to recognize and to keep enhancing. And, that's, if we can collaborate and build on that and keep transparency and accountability, that's, I think, where the success comes from. Thank you, Nati.
Thank you, Chloe. Kumo, I hope you can hear me. Kumo has some questions prepared for the panel, but also very interesting comments there by Kulego talking about civic tech forming the scaffolding for consumer tech, and what are the differences now? Can we see the difference between civic technology and consumer tech, right? So maybe somebody will engage with that comment quite later on. Kumo, over to you. Not sure if Kumo can hear me. In the absence of Kumo, what we're going to do, so she's going to restart and come back. I am very conscious of time. So what we're going to do, we're going to move on to our next presenters, and then we're going to come back to any questions that we might have had, and then we're going to have questions for the next presenters as well. So next up is, let me check quickly, open up. We're going to Callum, I think. Yeah, no, it's not Callum. No, open up is Siche. Hi, Siche. Siche Makanya is there. Is that you there?
Yeah, yeah, I was just
Oh,
muted.
fantastic.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Siche. Over to you.
Thank you, Nati. So yeah, hi everyone. Once again, my name is Sihle Makanya, and I'm a agile project manager working for OpenUp. Our mission is to build tools, open up data, and provide data training, which supports an active citizenry and helps communities and governments work better together. So we are based in Cape Town, South Africa. We have a lot of projects going on, but for today, I'll be briefly talking about the online monitoring tool and how it illustrates how government and civic tech organizations can successfully collaborate and the immediate results it can give to a national department. Let me just change over here to the next slide. All right. So, just to give you a bit of a background, the Department of Corporate Governance and Traditional Affairs, COGTA in short, plays an important monitoring and oversight role for various municipal committees in accordance with Section 79 of the Municipal Structures Act. The committees are usually temporary and appointed by executive committees as needed. They are usually set up to investigate a particular issue and do not have any decision making powers, but they can make recommendations. So, before the tool existed, the national department used to create a spreadsheet form, then send it out to 257 municipalities via email. Then the municipalities will fill in those forms and return it back to the national admins or the departments. So, the drawback to this approach is that everything had to be done manually, which was painstakingly slow, and various analysis could be missed during this process, as we also need to factor in human error. This had to change. And so the online monitoring tool was born, which is a low tech system to capture answers from questions being asked on those particular forms. So on this slide that I'm showing you now, like the admin console is where users of the tool will be added. This section will only be accessible to various national, provincial, and municipality admins. And with the national admin users, they will be able to create forms as they please and deploy them to either the provincial or to the municipalities directly. So when users have been added, they will receive an email address that will just contain the link to the compliance tool, their username, and a self-generated password that can be changed before you log in for the first time. So it can be accessible either by mobile or on a computer, making it easier for any users to complete forms on the go or at the office, just as long as they have a stable internet connection. So once a user has inputted their details, they will be directed to the homepage where there is a list of active forms, which will be displayed, and it's going to show the deadlines as well as the amount of questions that needs to be answered per form. So once a municipal officer is able to see those forms, they can. Sorry, let me repeat that. A municipal officer can also see forms that have been submitted in case they want to go back to answer for as just as a reference. So from our experience, this is handy as certain forms are repeated during the course of a year, and we find that certain answers remain the same with no changes at all. So when you are clicking on one of the active forms, it will take you directly to it, where a summary of how many questions were answered, the deadline, and the date it was distributed. This status bar is the same as the homepage, with only the difference being the Save Progress button in case a user can't complete all the questions at the same time. Earlier, I mentioned that various input options are available to be used. So for this example, this questionnaire has a mixture of short text, drop down, and checkboxes, which are used to give an indication of of how the forms were created and just the ease of use of it. We don't want to make it too complicated for a user. So as long as they can just keep on clicking and select the answer that they were looking for, that's just perfect on our side. And then on the national admin or the provincial admin users dashboard, they cannot answer the questions directly under their credentials. Instead, they are given a summary of what the responses have been, with the option to also download the summaries of these spreadsheets for further analysis, either as raw data or as a curated report on let's just say Microsoft Excel. So, in conclusion, the tool is a low-tech software that enables a municipal officer to input answers asked by the national admin, with the admins being able to see progress in real time, either by phone or computer. By implementing this tool, we have thrived to create access to a detailed form completion dashboard to help coordinate and focus on municipalities that have not completed their forms, help local and district municipalities manage forms better. So the submission rates will be a little bit more effective and provide improved feedback services, and as well as enhanced reporting abilities on forms. Through digital access of the forms, we will enhance reporting abilities on those prescribed forms. So this tool can be repurposed for any other departments or organizations that require a form-based system. And that's it on my side. Thank you. Over to you, Nati.
Thank you so much, Sihle. It was very quick, precise, as we like it. Now, we have Callum Oberholzer. My favorite thing is to say that. I know I probably butchered that, but it's a cool name. In any case, he is from Black Box. He's going to tell us about his initiative. And later on, I know Joanne Parker has been running demos. So she's going to tell us a little bit about that later on when we have everybody on the screen. I do want to promote that for people to come back. And there are booths on the thing on the platform. So if you haven't checked out the booths, please go check out those booths and see everything that maybe you didn't catch here, and every other person that's going to be exhibiting here. So I know that there are 10 other exhibitors outside of this group of people you are seeing here today. So make your way to those booths later on and see what everybody is doing on the continent. Callum, over to you.
Hi guys, how's it going? I hope you can see what I've got here up on my screen. Okay, fantastic. Yeah, so my name's Callum Oberholzer, and I am the director of Black Box. We do quite a bit of work with Joanne and Open Cities Lab, so it's nice to have a bunch of friends here on the sessions. It's nice to meet you. So Black Box is essentially we're a technology firm that's been developing digital products over the last couple of years, and our vision is to steward resources to impact people on the planet. Our focus is to understand how to design technology that stewards resources, and we particularly are focusing on 4 sectors at the moment within food, health, the environment, and education sectors. And so that's something that we're really passionate about. I think we've built a particular Civic tech tool, which I'm going to speak a little bit more about, but the overarching vision of our company is to understand a healthy relationship between digital tech products and societies, and how we can utilize those to steward resources. And when I speak about stewarding resources, it's not necessarily just building software that can help us make good decisions about water usage in the city, or making use of empty space in the city. It's also how do we steward the resources of young minds, in the country or in the continent. And so it's a broad vision, but it's something we're very passionate about. And so if I look at some of the tools that we've been building, we built basically a water suitcase for PwC, and then with Open Cities Lab and the Coffee magazine, we built a barista wage calculator, which really was to help understand the salaries that baristas are paid across the three major metros of South Africa, and at the same time collect a database on what different baristas are earning. And then I think what I want to speak about mostly today is the crisis map. And so how the crisis map started, we were working with Nkululeko from Pista, and I'm not going to tell the whole story, but essentially we were trying to build something that gave people a bird's eye view of, or gave decision makers and people wanting to be engaged in the relief efforts of a crisis, live data of what was happening on the ground in communities. And so we built this tool, which we're going to elaborate more on in the days to come, particularly in our MVP session with Open Cities Lab. But we built a tool that allowed people to essentially have a big Mayday button on their phone. That was as simple as it got. We were like, what do you need in a crisis? You don't want to have OTPs and verifications and all these sort of loops that we would generally put our users through in all our different pieces of software. We're like, if I'm in a crisis and my house is being flooded now, I need to put my name, my number, and my location on some sort of platform that just raises my hand and says, I need help right now. And so, yeah, we put together this crisis map in about 36 hours straight, and we put it out to various WhatsApp groups with people that were assisting in the flood relief efforts. And it went locally viral. So we had about, I think it was, in total, there was around, I think, 27,000 users that used it within the eThekwini municipality. And so it was, I think, like a great example for us of what it meant to act quickly and deploy something into the public and design based on our hopes of how we hoped people would use it, as opposed to our fears of how we would potentially be concerned of any abuses. And obviously, out of crisis, one would need to adjust a couple of things going forward. But this tool essentially was used through all departments of government, right the way through to, we're told, the presidential suite, and through KZN nerve centers and then national departments. And it allowed them to collect data on the types of issues that people were experiencing in various sort of geographical sectors. And then it also allowed collaboration between the government and the nonprofit agencies that were working, like Domino and SA Harvest. But I think for me, importantly, and this is where I get really excited about civic tech, is the citizen, that individual citizen who can participate in matters that are much bigger than just themselves. And in this scenario, what we saw is, like, you can see those little blue dots is where, a red dot would be a need that somebody could log their need, and then a green dot was where somebody who had a resource could log their resource. And then if you go onto the platform, you could see, okay, I've got this resource, maybe it's baby formula, and there's actually someone across my street who needs baby formula. And so this essentially allowed citizens to engage in the relief effort without having to go through various organizations. And that proved to be quite powerful. So that was the crisis map, which we will be talking about a bit more in the MVP session. And I think just, a bit more data around that. Probably at its peak, we had about 1,600 users there. I think that in that graph, it kind of jumps up to 4,000 users a day. And there was a lot of great sort of public sort of sharing of this information, which was a very difficult time for everyone in KZN. But then at the same time, it was, I guess, fascinating for our team to see how a solution could be used. And then, we've got a couple of other projects which we're working on, which I think we're excited about, but I've only got so much time. And so that is Blackbox.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I was, during that particular crisis in Durban, I saw a lot of, crisis map graphics everywhere on social media, people sharing that stuff. I think it was very helpful during that time. So I know Kumo is itching in a seat again to ask questions. What we're going to do is we're going to have questions for you and CJ. And then we're going to open the panel. I know we are going to run out of time, so I hope people are a little bit patient with us as we just kind of have everybody have a discussion. We don't want to just have a Q&A. I mean, just a presentation type of thing. We're going to have a conversation amongst exhibitors. I see that we have Bolaji, who was in last week but couldn't present because of connection problems. He had raised his hand before. So I'm going to ask him to raise his hand again because I want to see because there is a hand mic option. So I want to see if that works. So try that again, Bolaji. Kumo is going to be asking questions, but let's start with questions on the chat. Kumo, do you mind taking that?
Um, let me just try to check who asked questions from the chat.
Oh, Bolaji is asking if he can present today. So Bolaji, let's schedule you for next week, if you don't mind
Okay.
that. So, but if you have any other questions, let's try and let's get those questions. But in the meantime, let's get your questions, Kumo, and then we'll have the whole
Okay.
panel in the screen here.
Okay. No,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much. I think I literally had so many questions that I started grouping them so that I don't overwhelm everyone else. But most of the questions that I have are related to one, the data cost, given that everything that we are delivering as a civic tech is online, and given the reality of our data cost in South Africa. And then two, so I'm gonna spread the questions. I'm gonna ask 4 questions, and I'll allow speakers to answer any other question that they feel comfortable with. So one is the data cost. How do you incorporate that with the design of your product slash service? Two, how do you collect user feedback to make sure that your product or service does the work that it's supposed to do in the communities that you are working with? Three, I think mostly for uh, Dear SA and Abbas, I just want to know, in terms of language, how do you make sure that everyone else feels included in the participation, given the language differences in different countries, and also given the work that you do? I think I've asked 3, and then the other one is mostly in terms of who funds your product or service, and does that affect the outcome of the service that you're trying to offer?
Okay, so maybe let's start. I'm not sure who wants to go first. Kumo, who do you want to hear first? Or shall we start with
So
Abbas?
anyway,
Maybe?
sorry.
Shall we start with Abbas? Just alphabetically, maybe.
Yeah, so we can start with user feedback. How do you collect it? And then we can also take into consideration the data cost and the service offering.
Okay, cool. So Abbas, do you want to respond to that? If Abbas is not available, we'll just go back to
Yeah,
Sikhen. Okay, cool. Abbas.
yeah. Thank you very much. I think the user feedback, how we get our feedbacks mostly is we have a system where we do it both online, and we also do it through offline process. Now, using the online process, we engage people through the social media and also through the database that we have developed. We give them the opportunity to give us feedbacks, and we conduct surveys in order to get their feedbacks on the projects we are implementing, particularly on the trial monitoring and system. Then offline, we organize quarterly what we call a public policy dialogue. And in that public policy dialogue, we bring stakeholders in the judicial system together. And during that process, we hear feedback from them about our project, about the database, and what they think we will do to improve our work, and also what are the gaps in order for us to be able to cover them. So it's a two-way process of both online and also offline process. Secondly, about funding, how does it affect our work? Our project mainly is funded by international donor organizations. I think the first funding we got was from Trust Africa outside Nigeria, which informed the decision to build the database in the web application. Initially, we were using a basic database on a WordPress website using some plugins and what have you. But then, with the funding from Trust Africa, we were able to build a web application that informs and collect all the points we want to reflect on the database. Then it was further sponsored, or rather funded and supported by the DFID, Department for International Development, as it was then where, to improve the structure of the database, to improve the data points that will give citizens more information and also more capacity to be able to analyze the data that we have on the database. So basically, our funding comes from from outside the country, and therefore we are not indebted to be monitored, or rather to be cornered to do what the government want outside our work and our goal that we are set to achieve. And lastly, on the language, I think basically it was easy for us. The working language in Nigeria is English, and in most cases, our audience are English speakers, so it was quite easy for us to use English, which is also the language of the court. Thank you very much.
So I suppose okay, go ahead, Homer. Sorry about that.
No. So I was gonna say, I suppose either Chloe or Sihle or Karam can come in as well and answer the questions.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Kumo. If I may, just to add some insights on so from the language side in South Africa, it's not so straightforward. We have many official languages, and initially we did have some architectural, technological constraints, but not in a sense of it was going to be left there. We've managed to work through all of this. So because of our procedure with our platform, you can write in whichever language you wish. There's no bias. So if you want to write English, Afrikaans, Zulu, Sotho, no problem. You can submit. Through that is delivered straight to government. All those comments are accounted for. They're included as their natural form. We don't amend anything. It stays the data as the data. Just within that, the only time where data doesn't really get classified is when it comes after the closing period of the Gazette for comment. But otherwise, we want to hear it in all the colors, all the languages, all the pictures, because I think that is the what makes us unique as our culture here. And that's the one side. The other side is, I think you mentioned the data costs. So data is definitely a big criteria in our economy, in our economic systems. And I think geographically, there were some constraints from technological providers rolling out. And we've now seen a massive land grab from digital providers within the city space, but our sort of low income areas are still seeking that technology. From that department side, from a technology element, that we stay at the forefront of that. It is getting priority. I foresee in the next 2 to 3 years, we will have a bit more capacity there. But we are definitely working on plans with that. And as I was saying earlier, we are absolutely seeking collaborative partners in this space, so that we can try and reduce that hurdle and set up more digitally enabled sort of stations to be able to reach a few more people.
Right. I think that's. Just on that question of language. I think somebody once said to me, in any case, that even when you write with languages that people understand, that it's kind of like, so if you write in English, you're writing, so I know obviously there is a language that is used in court, right, that perhaps people may not use. So it's very interesting. People may not be able to understand. So it's very interesting how you then simplify that for people on the ground to be able to really, really understand. Is there some sort of workshopping to see people really, really understand the stuff that you've written? But before we go back to you, Abbas, Kalam, any responses to the questions that Kumo asked earlier on?
Yeah, and I was also just thinking on language. There's actually a whole sort of study within UX design around UX copy that really specializes in using layman's terms across all different forms of navigation and UX. But yeah, in terms of it was the data question. I think for me was quite important. There's how we've handled this is we've tried to stay away from native apps where possible and like installing onto devices. And we really enjoy a piece of tech called progressive web apps, which have become popular over the last maybe 5 to 7 years. And progressive web apps are like a hybrid website that basically allow you to install a application off the website, and it runs as a mini form of your browser, but it looks and feels like a platform. And those can be really data light. They can work offline, and they've got a bunch of other features as well. And they're also you don't need to have like official bank accounts and whatnot like you would for an iOS store or Play Store. So in terms of user access, people can utilize progressive web apps very easily. And then with NK's comment around the civic tech and consumer tech, and also what he was saying about starting at those positions where people are desperate for something, I think that's really key. Because you're kind of like going up Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so you find that your users are so much more open and wanting to participate with what you're doing because you're solving a really critical problem for them. And once you've solved those critical problems, then off that sort of infrastructure, they can engage in other things that are maybe less critical to them. So I think that's really key, like from someone journeying from like making use of civic tech, and then slowly journeying to be able to make use of consumer tech. And if you give them the consumer tech like the wrong way around, then that just doesn't make sense. So I thought that was a great spot from NK.
Right. CK, perhaps we'll get you on here. NK did ask another question. We'll put it up there for CK specifically. So I don't know if CK can put that up as well. So he said, I get the sense that civic tech injects itself into someone's life at their most vulnerable or frustrated state. Load shedding, service delivery, and others. This creates a bit of a soft landing where designers, developers can build from that position. So I would like your reflections on that, CK, and also just some of the questions from Kumo from earlier.
Well, in a sense, it does. It's where he's coming from is because we don't have a lot of feedback. We start getting that kind of feedback when certain bad things are happening, and that's when people get a lot of ideas as to what can we do to alleviate some of those frustrations that they have. And if there is some sort of a way that from a civic tech organizations, how we can connect with just ordinary citizens, as to what are they looking for specifically. And for us, like as Open Up, we have gone to communities to find out what are the issues that they are having at the current moment, and how can we sort of meet each other halfway to alleviate some of those frustrations, like certain things like evictions. People are facing a lot of evictions. how do their voices come out? And as an organization, we have come up with we have a project that's going on at the current moment where we are looking at those frustrations that they have. But it becomes very frustrating as to where do we start to actually figure out as to what kind of tools can be created that are alleviating some of these issues for partners.
Right. And I'm very interested in what Nkulego's definition of civic tech and what the difference civic tech and consumer technology is. So we're talking about technology that isn't for profit. Is that civic tech? And can civic tech be for profit and all those things? So very interested in what everybody else thinks about the differences between those. But I want to go back to okay, so something there. So I want to go back to the question from the first round in the Q&A for Chloe. Can you just put it up? Okay, she just put it up here. Question for Chloe. We engage in many rural communities, specifically this is from Adrian from Open Up. We engage in many rural communities, specifically capacity building on local government. Yet the reality is that connectivity, data costs are probably the biggest barrier. How have you looked to bypass this reality, Chloe?
Thanks, Nati, and thanks, Adrian. I think that's a terrific question and a very true question, let's say. And in terms of our current landscape, it is a current hurdle. I can't say that it's not. It's definitely prohibiting the distribution. So within that, we are trying to diversify means in which we reach the audience, because we need to desperately reach out to people within sectors where they are in a more rural space or where they are lacking some infrastructure, because that sector of feedback is really relevant to shaping our policies. And I think, also in terms of forming our economy into an environment that can function in different spaces, it's very critical. So I think in terms of the how to overcome this, I think firstly we need to see a diversity in connectivity options. I do foresee that data costs, we have seen a reduction the last sort of 12 to 18 months from various providers in the industry of the technological side. But this being said, it's still not enough. It's only starting to get to that transformative progressive state where it can start trading in different types of sort of economy scales, because when you are considering, let's say, connectivity in a township versus a very upmarket suburb, the requirements and the processes are very different, and we need to live each of those processes that's relevant to that market. I think that's very important. And providers from, whether it's a different type of connectivity type that's maybe cheaper in deployment but still got a high delivery rate, I think that's what we need to see. And through that, we need to then maybe start considering, things like zero-rated platforms to be able to, reach the residents and citizens in an easy, efficient format. And this is a current hurdle. So I don't have the cookie cut answer, but I hope that explains a little bit about where we're at of how we foresee to overreach it. And I would also be interested to reach out to you as well. Maybe we could have an offline discussion to hear your challenges, and maybe we have some collaboration on that note to tackle this.
That'd be interesting. That'd be very interesting. And I just want to go back to the whole question about workshopping language ideas and whether or not. So, I mean, because for instance, if you go to an area that has no internet connection, you will kind of find, okay, in this area, people don't have great internet connection. How do you work around that? And I want to go back to that question I had for Abbas earlier about workshopping, what language works here, and how far can we dumb down the language for people to understand. I just want to see what your experiences with language issues has been in Nigeria, Abbas.
I really didn't get the question. If you can come back,
Right.
please.
Yes, no, I was talking about, so earlier there was a question about language and what type of languages we're using in our applications or in our tools, right? And
Yeah.
so I wanted to understand, because you are working in the law space, right? And some of
Yeah.
that language can be very technical in nature and very difficult for people to understand. So my question to you is, how do you then make it easier for people to understand and be able to report back and say, this is something I want to find out about, etc. Have you workshopped this before you started developing this particular tool? How did you get to a process where you decided that this is the language you're going to use and this is how far we're going to take it?
All right. I think thank you. If I understand you, I understand. You are referring to the language of engagement with the people, basically those at the grassroots, right? Great. Like I said earlier, we may have different languages in Nigeria, but our working language is always one. Irrespective of where you are in any part of the country, our working language is English. And the nature of our work, we work with the authorities in the justice system, which also use English as the major language. Now, um, the point of engagement at a level where you engage a community regarding a work is our work is trial monitoring. Basically, it's a process where we enlist people who are trial monitors, and mostly they are people with legal background, and we train them and assign them to court. From there, they track those cases, collate information about the cases, and also we document those cases and visualize them on the database, and engage the relevant stakeholders, like I said earlier, both online and offline. Then we get feedbacks after that. Then where we usually come down to extent where we use different language is where we are having when we are having our public policy dialogue series, depending on the location we are having. In most cases, we try as much as possible when we are engaging locals in various committees to have an interpreter from that community who, in the process of our communication, may be able to interpret it and simplify it in a way that the locals will be able to understand. Now, the bulk of our work is about simplifying the language of the court for people to be able to understand the court processes, the court decision, and what have you. We have experts from within the system, from within our organization, who are lawyers, who are techies, who will be able to um, uh, interpret, or rather simplify, the language of the court in a way that all the information we put on our database are the simplified information that an ordinary citizen can read and understand, not really the legal terminologies, in order not to confuse them and also make things go bad. So I think if I understand your question, basically our language of engagement is still English, but in some instance, we have a system where we simplified the language of the court in a way that citizens will be able to understand and galvanize their support to scrutinize the justice system in a way where we have the opportunity to engage locals at the grassroots. We always have interpreters at our public policy dialogues to make it simple for them and to be able to engage them and get feedback from them.
Right. Unfortunately, thank you so much, Abbas. Unfortunately, some of our speakers had to drop off. We did schedule this for 1 hour, so thank you so much for everybody who's been patient and has stayed with us so far. What we're going to do, we're going to have one more question for Sifia, and then we're going to wrap very quickly. So thank you so much for everybody who stayed with us so far. Kumo, that question for Sifia, please.
Yeah, Sitle, so I think from my side, one thing that I want to understand is how do you measure impact in terms of the monitoring tool so far?
So the online monitoring tool is a very closed off software which is used by the national departments as well as the provincial admins or departments as well. So the way that we see impact is how long did it used to take for them to send out specific forms or questionnaires to all of those 257 municipalities, and how long did it take for them to actually get that information back, find out from the municipalities which ones have not completed it, as well as how do they analyze how do they analyze some of the forms that have been responded to. So that took quite some time for them to do. And the impact that can be shown from our online monitoring tool is everything is real time. You can see it all at once as to who has completed the forms, who has not. We can send out they can send out reminders to those municipalities just to let them know that they have not completed those forms, and could they do it before the deadline happens. So that is our impact, in that we have cut off all of those red tapes. Sometimes some of those emails will end up in spam messages. They don't see it, and then so it's a little bit more easier for all of those municipality managers just to log in, see what has been responded, what else is still required from them, and then they can just do those answers, submit, and it's straight. And then the national department can see that. So that's how we are looking at impact from our side, which I think has been going quite well so far.
Okay, thank you. Back to you, Nati.
Thank you so much, Kumo. I've enjoyed talking to everybody. Unfortunately, time hasn't been on our side. And again, thank you so much for staying with us until now. So I'm going to invite, because next week we do start with some of our virtual conversations on Air Meet. Next week at 5 o'clock again, we're going to try and maybe schedule this for longer. For maybe 1 hour and a half, we're going to have another exhibition hangout. Join us for that. But earlier on in the day, we're going to have our very first session, the opening plenary, called the Rise for Civic for the Civic, the Rise of the Civic in African Governance, right? So we'll have Toela Nyirenda there as our keynote speaker, and Open Up comes back again. For this particular session, people or impacts, discussing what comes first in the design methodology. Join us for that at 2 o'clock Central African time. And another one, I know some of you here are very concerned about finances and how you found your innovations. This might be a particular very good one for you to attend to understand the funding landscape and what you need to do for you to get those funds for your innovations. In any case, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. We're going to play us out with some music from Melomino.
together, let's blaze up. Remember night, night when I baby. We smoke those old blows, and not a candy bone. Looking at every little thing like we just dream. Oh yeah, looks like we never end. Let's continue to ascend. Oh man, I'm beating, baby. Listen to my heart, it keeps on beating, baby. Don't slow down, baby. I'm on cloud nine. We're coming alive tonight. We're coming alive.